All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stephanie Allen, and I am the Assistant Director of Professional Programs within the Division of Professional Studies. I'd like to welcome you to the UMBC Learning and Performance Technology Virtual Information Session. We hope that you enjoy this session, and without further ado, I introduce you to the Graduate Program Director, Dr. Greg Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. As Stephanie said, my name's Greg Williams. Please call me Greg, and we're going to take some time today to talk about the Learning and Performance Technology program. The program essentially is a instructional design program. We've updated the name over the years, so if people want to know, well, what is that? If you say instructional design, a lot of people actually know what that is right now compared to like maybe 20 years ago. So let's get started here. So what we're going to do today is talk about the important aspects of, the curriculum, the program, how admissions works, jobs, salaries, probably most, if not everything you'd want to know. Feel free to chime in with questions whenever you would like. That would be certainly beneficial, getting to answers to those. So it's not, a session where we say, well, don't say anything until, the very end. If you have a question, please just hop right in there. So our program overview, all right? So this program is one of the master's program, for example, is one of the oldest, most senior master's programs at UMBC. It is over 50 years old. It was started by Dr. Marvin Cook. Dr. Marvin Cook was like me, a predecessor, but he was a lot smarter. He actually designed this program, and his whole thing was, one of the guiding principles of the program was he wanted to teach it to a population that could apply it immediately. So he chose the working population of working adults, and this is like in the late 60s, before that was really popular. I mean, now people talk about graduate programs, and they always talk about applied programs for working adults. Well, we've been that since like 1968. We've updated the program, of course, over those years, but our target population, still feeds on that. And one of the things that is important in our program is, learning by doing. So you don't necessarily take tests. We have you work on projects just like you would in probably the real world. It's an online program. It is synchronous. We'll have asynchronous. We'll do have some voluntary, periodic synchronous sessions. But so the program's designed for adults and geared for adults. Let's take a look. Okay. So again, our approach basically is, we know that 95% of our students are working somewhere, most of them full-time, and they have other things going on in their life. So our approach is basically, let's give them what they need to survive in the workplace or to get a job in the workplace. Many of our students are returning to school after maybe 10, 15, 20, or sometimes even more years away from formal education. So it's not uncommon for, sometimes people wonder, it's like, well, I'm 35 years old. Will I be the only 35 or older person in this program? And the answer is no, you probably will not. The average age is about 39 to 40. We have slightly more women in our program than men, and most of them are, like I said, they're employed full-time locally. In our locality is Baltimore, Washington corridor, and then in between there as well. So, our model is we want to teach people what they need to survive career-wise, because a lot of people come into this program to get a job, to get a different job, to get a more meaningful job, to get a graduate credential. A lot of them have been working maybe in the field for a number of years, but they're concerned that, well, I'm not sure I'm doing it the right way. So there's lots of things that we can approach along those lines. So why learning and performance technology, at MBC? There's other programs out there. Why us? Well, we'll tell you why. Well, we have been around for over 50 years, so chances are many people that are taking a look at a program, investigating the program, will talk to people. They'll talk to people that might be at their place of work, in their friend circles, perhaps, or in their network. And we have a lot of alumni out there. So that's one way. Talk to our alumni, see what they say about us. We use an applied approach. So, you know, academic case studies are fine, but we think an applied approach is better. And people work on, real life problems with real life clients. Okay, you'll work with a real life client from your first course. The program, it isn't random in terms of being designed that way. Okay, we know that the majority of our students are working adults. So Dr. Cook's philosophy way back in the late 60s is still with us today. He wanted students to be able to learn something on a Wednesday night, and then Tuesday morning, the next day at work, he wanted them to be able to apply that in their workplace. And we're still doing that 50 some years later. So working adults, that's who we are for the most part. We work on projects, okay? For the most part, in your classes, you're not going to have midterms or finals or papers, with the exception of one course. You'll have a paper, research paper. But our curriculum is based on projects, just like you'd work on in the real world, and you'll do that from course number one. So I'm kind of moving maybe somewhat quickly through these. If there's any questions, please feel free to chime in, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Portfolio. We require that a student submit a portfolio. Prior to this, this is of work you've already done, work samples that you've done in your classes. We were a program which like a lot of other master's programs, very traditional to have an exam at the end of the program, and it would test you on, it's like a comprehensive exam that would test you on everything you took in the program. And then what we realized was this probably isn't real effective for students. It's more of an endurance test. You sit there and you write for like 4 hours, and your fingers and your arms are tired from typing or writing. And you don't say when it's done like, wow, what a helpful experience that was. So we basically decided to create a portfolio in addition to courses, instead of taking an exam, a comprehensive exam, which, well, it's not a bad program, but we think it's the better ways to use the portfolio approach. So once you create your portfolio, which you do along the way, because every course that you take can be added to your portfolio, then you can not only tell people what you know, but you can show them. You could talk to them about, well, here is a course design plan that I created, and here's what it actually looks like. Okay. In our field, there are a number of professionals that basically, in organizations, and when you apply for a job, they want to see samples of your work. So this is kind of putting you in the right position to succeed. And the only complaint we got about portfolios when we started doing it was, why did you wait so long? Why didn't you do this 10 years ago or whenever? So we've been doing it for a while now, and people are liking it. Our faculty are practitioners in the field, with the exception of maybe 1 out of 14 professors. They are practitioners in the field, working for places like Booz Allen, federal government, IBM, large hospitals such as like Johns Hopkins or Mercy, and then from small businesses and mid-sized businesses. So we have people that are faculty that work at all these places. And what we find is these folks, these faculty, are experts in their field, and they're right there at the cutting edge. They are, working with clients and individuals, using the cutting edge knowledge that they've gained in the field. A lot of them are also our alumni as well, which is a nice benefit, I believe. So our program, there's a lot of master's programs out there. They're a program where you have, no choice, um, no customization. So in our program, the master's is 10 total courses, and 3 of those courses can be electives. Okay. We have a pretty decent offering of elective courses. And if there's something that, you want to study that we don't have a course in, or UMBC doesn't have a course in, we welcome you to take a graduate program course from another program and transfer that in. You can do that with up to 2 courses, okay? The caveats are it has to be at the graduate level. You have to get at least a B in it. It needs the program director approval, which is me, and that's it. For example, we had one student that taught in K through 12, and he wanted to take a course in adaptive measures, like how do you work with special education students in terms of adaptive technology. And we didn't have a course like that, so they took a course at it was then UMUC instead of like UMGC. And the bottom line is the student got what they needed. They were happy, and we were happy to, accommodate them. So that is possible to do that. We do have students to do that. So why some people will say, well, why should I go into instructional design? I like working with, training and education programs and products. And a lot of people approach it from maybe a position that's a little bit more focused in terms of economics. There are a number of jobs in there. If you searched jobs in LinkedIn, there are tens of thousands of jobs being advertised in instructional design, and then another 10 to 15,000 more instructional technology. There's a lot of part-time jobs out there, which is becoming more prevalent, but there's a lot of full-time jobs as well. So that's a big reason that people are out there. The pay is pretty good. For DC, the average salary is roughly, I would say, like in the low 80s, and Baltimore it's slightly lower. All right. So admission. So to get into the program, you have to apply for admission, and it's probably a fairly typical process compared to most places where you get your transcripts sent to us and you fill out the online application. And I believe you get, if you apply, we give you a discount on the application. I'm sure Stephanie can tell us about that later. But I'm pretty sure you get either a discount or a fee waiver. So I'm not really sure exactly. You can save money, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So what the graduate school is really looking for, the most important criteria they're looking for is your undergraduate grade point average. Okay. So when you graduated from, Towson University or George Mason University, or, wherever you went to get your undergraduate, they want to see like a solid B average. Okay. Roughly about, close to a 3.0. All right. So that's the number one criteria they are looking for. People can do letters of recommendation, and that helps. But essentially, if you get a 3.0, we're going to admit you, okay? Because that proves that, you can do academic work, okay? If somebody has less than that, all is not lost. There are ways of, getting around that, or alternatives to pursue. So what we have done successfully over the years is if somebody does not get admitted, let's say they have, a 2.6, and it's close to that 3.0, but not quite. What we then encourage them to do is take a couple of courses as a non-degree student, get at least a B, which usually most students do, and then reapply. And what I do is I endorse them. I'll say, John has taken 2 courses in our program as a non-degree. He got an A in one, he got a B in another. I, fully recommend him to be accepted for admission because he has proven that he can do college level work at the graduate level. And basically, I can't remember a student that I did not get in based on that approach. So you can get in if you don't have a 3.0. There's other ways to do that, as I just described. Okay, so our curriculum, well, did we make all this stuff up, or how did we decide what we wanted to do? So our model is based on a professional association, the Association for Talent Development, ATD, and they came up with their competency model. They spent hundreds and hundreds of hours and, thousands and thousands of dollars developing this model. So what you can see right here is their model, and it talks about, instructional design, of course. Oops, let me move back on that. So if you wanted to see the entire set of competencies, so performance improvement, instructional design, training delivery, etc., it tells you about, what you'll be able to do by attacking those and mastering those instructional design competencies. So we have adopted their competencies because, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and spent hundreds and hundreds of staff hours, researcher hours figuring out, well, what should somebody study if they want to be in this field? So they already did that, and I didn't think that I could do a better job by myself since they'd already done a very good job. So we just kind of adopted this model. Okay, so that's why we study what we study. So there are two different sorts of programs we have. One is a master's, and one is we have several certificate programs, graduate certificate programs. So let's talk about these. Oops, let me start off with the master's. All right, so the master's program is 10 total courses. There's 7 required courses and 3 electives. It's an online program, just like our certificates, okay? And the program is, obviously an accredited program, and you get a Master of Arts in Learning and Performance Technology, okay? You do have the ability to make some course substitutions, your electives, excuse me. And so you have a say in that, because there are some programs that'll say, our program's 10 courses long, and you will study these 10 courses. Usually it's in a discipline like nursing or engineering where they don't have a lot of room for electives. So they say, take these 10 courses or these 12 courses, and then you'll get your master's. So we give you some choice. For example, some people like to take, 7 of the required courses, and then for their electives, they like to take the instructional technology courses because the addition of the knowledge of that software, I think, is very helpful and instrumental in getting jobs, because sometimes employers like to not only have you know how to design a course, but how to develop a course using technology such as, Adobe Captivate or Articulate software. Okay, so that's our master's. We have several certificate programs. Now, the word certificate is a funny word, okay? It can have a lot of different connotations depending on, who is, contemplating it, because there are certificates that, you get a piece of paper when you walk out of a training session. It's like, here, you get a certificate. There are others that are more developed and articulated, I should say. And our program is, to get a graduate certificate. Let's say Stephanie and I are in the same class. Okay, she has chosen as her goal to get a master's. I've chosen to get a graduate certificate. We're taking our first course, Principles of Instructional Design. So we're sitting there in the same class with the same instructor, same syllabus, and same book. Okay, so the only difference between Stephanie and me is that, we both complete the course and both get a B, or let's say Stephanie gets an A because I know she's very smart. And what it really means is she can, pursue, the next course, and I can pursue the next course. So the graduate certificate, there's nothing light or like flimsy about it. It's not academically flawed. It's not just a piece of paper. You're taking the same coursework and the same curriculum that the master's person is. You're only just taking like a portion of the master's. You're not taking the entire 10 courses. All certificates are 4 courses in length. and we have them in instructional systems development. Whoops. We have them in instructional technology, e-learning, and then learning and performance technology. Okay. So all of the certificates transfer to the masters. So you take these 4 courses in the instructional systems development program, those will transfer to the master. So if somebody completes the certificate, they are 4/10 of their way to a master's because they've completed 4 courses, which we think is an advantage. And a lot of people enter the master's program using this route. So our program has always been very job and career oriented, where people have told me, like when I first took over the program managing it some years ago, one of the things I discovered was the career theme, that people were here to learn something that enabled them to get a job, to get a different job, to get a more meaningful job, to get a job that really motivated them, etc. It's all about jobs and careers, and that's why our program is so career oriented. 2 of the hallmarks that I think are definitely out there in terms of, if you were to describe a couple of characteristics of the program, choice and flexibility are 2 good words, because you do get choice of electives, so that's some choice there. But when you go into each course, you have the ability to work on a project where there's flexibility in pursuing, path A versus path B. Okay. For example, let's say you have to create a training program for teachers at a teaching institution. So that could be a K through 12 group of teachers, or it could be college faculty. There would be some similarities, but of course, teaching college is different than teaching 3rd grade. So we allow you that choice. If you said, well, yeah, I want to do this thing because I work through K through 12. I want to learn how to teach, kindergarten teachers how to teach, and create a program to train them. And then somebody else might say, well, I'm interested in education, but I'm interested in college education. Could I create a program as my assignment to help college professors, adjunct faculty, learn how to create a course and do it systematically the proper way? Absolutely. So there's definitely choice and flexibility. So you could have a lot of different choices and ways to apply that. So Calvin, some of you might remember Calvin. Calvin is a comic strip that I always really enjoyed. And so here's Calvin with his teacher, Mrs. Wormworth. And take a minute to read it. Calvin has his own idea on tests there. So as you can see, Chef Boyardee, Calvin's answer was not the right answer. And Mrs. Wormworth is kind of scolding him there. And Calvin just says, I just don't test well. And that's interesting because we don't really have tests, because that's only one method. So this gentleman is Dr. Thiagi, and Dr. Thiagi is an expert in our field. He used to be a tenured professor at the University of Indiana. He actually quit that job, which is very rare that people quit tenured faculty jobs, and he became a full-time consultant, and he's been doing that for the last 20 years. And he's spoken here at UMBC, and I remember we were talking about evaluating training on adults, and he had some theories on that. But he said, Greg, do you ever take tests at work? And I remember saying to myself, well, no, I've never taken a test at my job. And then I thought about it, and that's like, well, there's probably not that many people employees that actually take tests on their job. I mean, it's possible, but the only one I can think of is like when policemen take that sergeant's exam to be the sergeant. That's an exam. So his point was, well, why do we make them take tests if they never really, take a test at work? Let's evaluate them another way. And that's what we do as well. We don't give people tests to evaluate them. We assess their projects, essentially. So our projects, we like to call project-based learning, and people will work on projects. That's going to be the main, method of, your student activities. in our program, and you'll get evaluated and graded in that manner. We do have field experiences. There's a formal internship and capstone course that you take at the end, but essentially a lot of your courses are going to include projects that you will work on. So they will be field-based. And, as you probably know now, we're kind of going back and forth from, in person to virtual. And it kind of is just, it's the way the world works, where 20 years ago, people were like, how do I, if I have to go over to that company and spend some time there, is that going to be the way that we're going to do this? Well, now it's kind of invisible how it works, right? It just works. We do things virtually. We do things like we're doing now through, WebEx or, other platforms. We're sharing videos, et cetera. So that's kind of how our field experiences work. So we do have a portfolio, which I've mentioned before. And basically, a portfolio is a collection of your work samples that you have created in your classes. This is your intellectual property. Once you create that, of course, it's yours, and you could show it to prospective employees to corroborate, what you know about instructional design, about training, performance improvement, instructional technology, etc. You'll even see some job advertisements now that will say, share a copy of your portfolio or, a sample of your work, if you will. So that's, fairly common these days. It's not unusual. So we want to prepare you what adults, not adults, well, they are adults, but what employers are actually going to ask of you. Okay. Not every type of learning takes place in a classroom, right? That's learning in classrooms. That's normally considered formal learning, but we do what we like to call informal learning. So we have some, people can take advantage of some of our faculty in terms of, mentoring them and sharing from their experience. For example, I was working with a young lady who was very stressed out, and I asked, gee, why are you so stressed out? Are you okay? And she said that her boss had left and that management basically dumped not only, an increased workload on her job, but gave her boss's workload. And I said, did they say anything about, a raise or anything like that? She said, no. I said, did they give you a time frame that we're going to be filling the position within? She goes, nothing. I just got the work and I can't do it all. And I'm having a nervous breakdown. So, we talked about what she could do, et cetera. But that's what our faculty do. That's what I do is, we try to help people because, we all don't learn from formal classroom training. There's informal learning, like I just talked about, and that's one of the things that we believe in as well. Now, our faculty, which I mentioned briefly before, these are, all of our faculty with the exception of, let's see, we have 14 faculty, and out of the exception of myself and another full-time faculty, everybody is working, a full-time job, as a consultant or as an employee at some organization working on training and instructional design, instructional technology, et cetera. And I hire them. So, the most important thing that I can do in this program is hire good faculty. And we have a really good faculty that work for us and share knowledge. And it's really the heart and soul of our program is our excellent faculty. Student services. So we do have excellent student services because we recognized a long time ago that your total experience not only includes the academic courses that you take, but also the student service experience that you experience, within the program. Because you have to remember, UMBC, it's a state organization, and so it's a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies by definition don't necessarily work, real well all the time. There's issues at times. So what we try to do is we try to kind of take you by the hand and walk you through the process where we show you what you need to do to get registered for class, to get the service you need, to get some answers on your, Veterans Affairs, financial aid paperwork, et cetera. So we recognize that that's an important piece of your experience. Costs, okay? That just shows you the cost between, Maryland residents and then non-Maryland residents. Books roughly are about $100 a course. There are some courses where there are no books, okay? Like I teach an internship course. There's no book for that, so you save money on it there. There is something called regional tuition, which is a great program. I think we've had it for at least 5 years, probably more. And basically, if you live in the District of Columbia, if you live in Northern Virginia and then Pennsylvania and those counties, you get the same tuition rate as an in-state Maryland resident. So if I live in, Falls Church, Virginia, 10 years ago, I would have had to pay an out-of-state tuition. All right. Now, through arrangements we've made, you get the Maryland in-state tuition rate. Okay. Now, I'm not exactly sure why we have specific counties, but that's kind of above my pay grade. I'm not sure what was the ins and outs of that. Or if somebody lives in Delaware, in addition to District of Columbia, they also get the out-of-state tuition. So that can save somebody thousands of dollars. All right. So the U.S. Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, has said that jobs in instructional design have a bright job outlook. Here are some career paths that you can kind of take a look at. Typically, somebody will be an instructional designer. They might progress to be a senior designer or instructional designer, 2, for example. Typically, another way to progress is to take on project management duties. Then beyond that, with the second bullet, people can progress from a senior instructional designer to a training manager and then maybe the director of training. So there's different ways that people can progress in the field, okay? Salaries, we mentioned these briefly. In Baltimore, it's roughly $62,000 to $75,000 a year. Washington, it's slightly higher, about $6,000 to $10,000 more. And then you see the national average is about $70,000. Okay, so pay for instructional design is actually pretty good in Washington, D.C., Baltimore metro areas. Okay. So we're going to wrap this up here, folks. Why should you pursue Learning and Performance Technology, UMBC? Well, we've talked about our wide network of alumni that's out there, talking about the reputation of the program. We have an applied approach, which means, we don't do a lot of research, focusing on research. We actually apply the research. The program was designed for you as a working adult, and that has been the way it's been for, decades, actually. Our learning is not midterms and finals and research papers, but it's project-based learning and work on projects that people in instructional design and training do in the real world. So we emulate the real world. We have a portfolio approach, so you could when you create samples of your course deliverables, you put them in your portfolio, and those can be shared with a prospective employer or even your current employer for a promotion, perhaps. Faculty, which is the heart and soul of our program, they are practitioners and they bring their expertise to us to share with our students. So that's me doing a lot of talking. We're now at the end here, and I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have on anything. Now is the time. Mark, yes.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you so much for going through the program for us here. I do have one question. Everything sounds really good. I really appreciate the project-based learning. I was wondering if you could tell me more about how that works in terms of the program assigns you to a client to work with, and
Right.
you mentioned
Sure.
it's mostly virtual, right?
Right. Yep. So there's a couple of ways people can go about it. We have some contacts where we could hook you up with organizations that we have a relationship with, and we can hook you up with them to identify and then work on a project. The other way is people um, either know of organizations or they work in an organization that are working on something and they find a client that way. A lot more people tend to use their own organization now than ever before, just because they're familiar with it, et cetera. So those are the two basic ways.
That's great. Thank you. I think that's the missing component for me is putting pen to paper and getting the practice. I've done a lot of self-study, and
Okay.
I think that that's the missing component for me. I'm currently employed, and I work in the corporate training space, and
Okay.
I am sure that there's things that I could learn in terms of needs analysis and designing courses to be more
Right.
effective.
Right.
So,
So how did you first hear about the program?
um, so Chuck Hodel, I read his book, and
Oh, okay.
I attended a ATD National Capital Region chapter meeting where he was presenting, and I think he had some sort of association with UMBC. So,
Yeah, Chuck has taught for us for a number of years. Right.
okay, yeah. So that's what sparked my interest. So, yeah, I think my next step is convincing my employer to sponsor me applying.
Okay. Okay. Do you have like a tuition reimbursement program at your place of
Um,
employment?
we do, but um, they mostly want to sponsor things that are engineering based
Okay.
or computer science based. So it's a work in progress, trying to convince them to send me for a Master of Arts. That's a challenge.
Okay. All right. Well, any other questions?
No, this was very informative.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Okay.
Let me also add, you'd mentioned earlier about fee waiver, and I would like to let you all know that because you attended today's session, we will be providing you an application fee waiver. It is an individual waiver, so it's a one-time, one use by each individual. And so that will come between 1 to 2 weeks after this event. And it comes from our DPS marketing team, so it's not necessarily by Greg's name. It will come from our UMBC marketing team. And so I will say within 2 weeks, if you do not receive that information and that is something that you want, just reach back out to us and we'll ensure to get that for you. And then, as I said at the top of the hour, both of you here will be receiving, here and those that RSVP'd, will be receiving a copy of this video recording as well as a copy of these PowerPoint slides. So you'll be able to go back to some of the great information that Dr. Williams has provided. He likes to be called Greg, excuse me, as Greg has provided earlier. And then last but not least, you attended today, and that is wonderful. But in case you have additional questions and or want to come and meet us here on campus later this semester, actually on Saturday, November 4th, we are going to have an in-person on-campus professional programs information session. So you'd be able to meet Greg, some of his fellow colleagues, the rest of my colleagues in terms of staff, the Career Center, and we'll have a couple of current students there kind of spotlighting their experience here as a professional program student. So if you'd like to come out to that, we'd love it. It's again Saturday, November 4th. It will be for 2 hours, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. We'll provide a light continental breakfast, and I am going to paste the link here in the chat box where if you'd like to Go to that. You can read more information about it. And actually, that's a direct link to register and RSVP for that event. And then as we get closer to that, our RSVP team will be sending you confirmation information and other things. So if you didn't get, today was wonderful, but if you still feel like you want to know more and or you want to meet us in person, come out and join us on Saturday, November 4th.
All right. And folks, thank you, Stephanie. I've added my contact information. If you want to, call me or email me, my contact information is there on the screen for you. And that's my cell phone number. So it's only answered by me. So be happy to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming, everyone.